He says, no, the stuff we do without thinking, the seemingly trivial act of just existing in the physical world, that is the Everest of computational challenge.
That one sale, that one painting, generated more revenue for Christie's than, well, than many entire companies make in a year.
It's just such an abstract number, $450 million.
They were likely born from the same cloud of gas and dust about 300 million years ago and are all traveling in the same direction.
So 5 of them were a cosmic family.
Okay, so I want you to imagine something for a moment. Picture the absolute peak of computing power in the late 90s. Think Deep Blue.
The machine that beat Kasparov.
Exactly. This machine has just spent, 3 hours completely dismantling the world chess champion. It gets logic, it can do symbolic integration, it proves these insane math theorems faster than any person alive. I mean, this machine is the definition of smart.
Right, it's the pinnacle of artificial intelligence as we understood it then. We built something that could conquer what we all thought was the very height of human intellect. Abstract strategic thought.
Totally. But then, picture this. As that champion machine, wheels away from the chessboard, it completely misses a chair that's just slightly out of place, clips the corner, and the whole thing just tumbles over.
Or, to be a bit more serious, if you ask that same genius machine to sort through a box of, say, slightly bent bolts and pick them out from a pile of scrap metal, it would be a total failure.
And that right there, that profound disconnect, that's the core of what we're unpacking today. It's Moravec's paradox.
Yeah, that moment where a machine can show genius-level skill in one area, but have the perception and motor skills of, well, a toddler at best. That's the whole thing.
So let's really dig in. This idea, which is named after the computer scientist Hans Moravec, it's so counterintuitive that it didn't just cause problems for AI researchers. It basically blew up their whole understanding of intelligence. Moravec put it best in 1988. He wrote, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, "It is comparatively easy to make computers exhibit adult-level performance on intelligence tests or playing checkers.
And difficult or impossible to give them the skills of a 1-year-old when it comes to perception and mobility." That's the line.
That's the line.
And that sentence, for anyone trained in early AI, is just an intellectual punch to the gut. I mean, for decades, the thinking was that tasks that took intense conscious effort from us, the math, the logic, those had to be the hardest for a computer.
And Moravec just flips that on its head.
He completely flips the script. He says, no, the stuff we do without thinking, the seemingly trivial act of just existing in the physical world, that is the Everest of computational challenge.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace this intellectual fault line. Why does this weird inverse pattern even exist? We'll look at the early history of AI, the hubris of it all.
And we have to get into the deep evolutionary biology that explains it, the whole billion years argument.
Yeah, we're looking for those aha moments about where our intelligence actually comes from and how modern AI is maybe finally starting to crack these truly hard problems.
Right. We're not just talking about what computers are bad at. We're really trying to redefine what we even mean by hard and smart. So get ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about complexity.
Because sometimes just standing up straight takes more processing power than winning at chess. Okay, so let's jump right into that core observation. Section 1, the counterintuitive challenge. The basic idea was, well, simple. The stuff that feels effortless for us.
Like seeing, moving around, judging distance.
Yeah, navigating a crowded room without bumping into people. All of that was proving to be incredibly demanding for machines computationally. But the things we find hard abstract reasoning, logic computers were cracking those relatively easily.
And this wasn't just, a theoretical problem. It was an economic disaster for a lot of early AI projects. When companies tried to build automated factories, they found that, sure, optimizing the logistics plan was the easy part.
The impossible part was getting the robot arm to just pick up a bolt it had never seen before, especially if the lighting was a little bit different.
Exactly. It just couldn't do it.
So why is that so counterintuitive for us as humans? I think it's because we mix up conscious effort with computational difficulty, right? Yeah. If I spend a whole day trying to debug some code, that feels hard.
Of course.
But if I see my friend across a busy street and instantly recognize them, that feels like nothing. It's effortless.
That's the trap. It's totally the trap. If you spend years in school learning calculus, you assume it's this incredibly complex, high-value process. But walking across a gravel path without tripping, which you learned as a toddler, you assign zero computational value to that.
For the machine, though, it's the other way around.
It's completely inverted. And that's why this realization started bubbling up from a few different leading thinkers all around the same time in the 80s.
It must have been a really humbling moment for the entire field. So who else was on this track besides Moravec?
Well, a huge voice was Alan Newell, one of the founders of AI and cognitive science. He talked about this back in 1983, and he called the old way of thinking a myth of the field.
The myth being that the so-called higher functions were the real prize.
Exactly. Newell said that early researchers were certain that automating man's higher reasoning functions, the stuff you learned at a university, that was a straightforward bit. The really hard part, he argued, was automating the basic functions we share with the rest of the animal kingdom.
Wow, with the rest of the animal kingdom. That's such a powerful way to reframe it.
Isn't it?
It immediately suggests that all our abstract logic might just be a thin layer on top of this incredibly ancient, complex operating system.
Precisely. If logic is new and simple, but perception is ancient and complex, it throws our whole hierarchy of what's valuable cognitively into question. And this connects perfectly to what another giant, Marvin Minsky, was saying around the same time.
Right, Minsky focused on the unconscious.
Yeah, he focused on the hidden complexity of it. He had this amazing quote, "In general, we're least aware of what our minds do best."
Which is such a critical insight. It explains the whole AI blind spot. We only notice a process when it fails or when it takes effort.
Think about it from an engineering standpoint. Your visual system is this massive parallel processing engine. It's seamlessly integrating millions of data points, light, color, depth, motion prediction, all in real time. If it's working perfectly, your conscious mind registers none of that calculation.
You're not aware of the work.
Right. Minsky said, "We're more aware of simple processes that don't work well than of complex ones that work flawlessly."
So if I reach for my coffee cup and my brain calculates the trajectory, the grip strength, the velocity, all perfectly, I feel nothing. It's automatic. But if I misjudge the weight and spill it, that failure is what my conscious mind registers. That's when I think, oh, this is hard.
You've got it. We judge difficulty by how much time we spend struggling. But the truly complex stuff, the perception, the millions of little calculations for movement, that's all running under the hood, silent and invisible. And the very smoothness of human perception led AI researchers to wildly underestimate how hard it would be to copy.
They were trying to reverse engineer something they didn't even realize was happening.
Exactly. They were pouring all their effort into coding symbolic logic because it could see the steps and track the failures. But sensor motor skills were this black box of effortless success. It's like valuing a calculator more than the ability to just walk across a room.
And all this convergence of ideas from Moravec, Newell, and Minsky, it all led to Steven Pinker's famous summary in his 1994 book, The Language Instinct.
Ah, yes. Pinker's summary just nailed it for the broader scientific world. He wrote that the main lesson of 35 years of AI research is that the hard problems are easy and the easy problems are hard.
It's such a perfect quotable line.
It is. It showed how dramatically the AI community had misread the map of human cognition. They confused intellectual labor, like chess, with computational necessity, like seeing.
It's just a stunning example of how a whole scientific field can get sidetracked by its own bias, defining complexity only by what feels difficult to the human ego. And that intellectual shift leads us right to the heart of the why. Why is perception so brutally difficult to code? And this is where Moravec's evolutionary explanation really takes center stage.
The answer is, really, it's just time. Moravec's whole argument was that all our skills are implemented biologically, and they've been refined over and over by natural selection. So the rule is simple. The older the skill, the more time evolution has had to optimize it.
To debug the code, basically.
Exactly. To preserve improvements, find shortcuts, and just get rid of inefficient solutions. It means our brain's architecture is like a computational history book. We're running code that's been optimized over geological time just to do basic stuff like see and keep our balance.
Right. Think about what it takes to survive in a world full of predators. You need real-time, high-stakes computation for vision and movement.
Oh, for sure. Our ancestors who had, slow, clunky processors for vision, well, they didn't stick around long enough to pass on their genes. Moravec quantified this inherited knowledge in his fantastic quote. He said, "Encoded in the large, highly evolved sensory and motor portions of the human brain is 1 billion years of experience about the nature of the world."
1 billion years of experience. That's a staggering amount of programming.
It is 1 billion years of experience about the nature of the world and how to survive in it.
And what kind of computational tasks are we talking about in that billion years?
Oh, think about something like stereoscopic vision. Your brain isn't just taking 2 pictures. It's instantly calculating depth, texture, velocity, predicting where things are going to be. It's a dedicated physics engine that's been optimized by trial and error for millions of generations.
Or even something like picking up a coffee cup.
Right. You don't consciously solve friction equations. Your sensorimotor system instantly judges the material, the weight, the surface, and applies the exact minimum force needed to lift it without crushing it or dropping it. That's an optimized algorithm we just inherit.
So what does that powerful ancient engine think of our prized abstract thought, our logic, our math?
Moravec calls it the thinnest veneer of human thought.
The thinnest veneer.
Yeah, it's a new, high-level application. It's effective, sure, but only because it's running on top of and supported by that vastly older, more powerful, unconscious sensorimotor knowledge. It's piggybacking on the infrastructure built for survival.
So my ability to do algebra isn't some freestanding superpower. It's just a new app I'm running on a massive ancient operating system that was designed for dodging tigers and finding berries.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the time scale comparison is what makes it so convincing. You have to break down the time difference.
Okay, let's do it. Let's start with the ancient, effortless skills.
Okay, so those have had millions, even up to 1 billion years of evolutionary refinement. We're talking about perception, motor skills, social intelligence.
Recognizing a face, judging someone's intentions, catching a ball.
Exactly. These are the skills that make us prodigious Olympians in the natural world. They run with incredible parallel efficiency, and they're mostly unconscious. If a skill is essential for survival, like telling a predator from a shadow, evolution makes sure it's fast, efficient, and takes up zero conscious bandwidth.
Okay, now contrast that with the new skills, the effortful ones.
These are things like math, engineering, formal games like chess, symbolic logic, scientific reasoning.
Yeah.
They're evolutionarily very new, less than 100,000 years old probably. They often rely on recent inventions like language and writing.
And these are the skills that are hard for us, for humans, because they're so new.
Yeah.
Our brains didn't evolve to do abstract symbol manipulation. We have to rely on cultural evolution school, books, rules to get good at them.
And our implementation of them is inefficient.
Yeah.
It's slow. It demands a ton of conscious effort. When you solve a math problem, you're basically hijacking old circuits. You might write it down, visualize the steps. You're leveraging that old system in a new, clunky, sequential way.
So when a computer easily solves an algebra problem, it's not showing some deep intelligence. It's just using a narrow, evolutionarily young skill that happens to be easy to formalize with rules.
It's a symbolic trick that computers are great at because they excel at that kind of sequential processing. It's nothing like the messy, real-time, parallel processing you need just to see the world.
Which brings us back to that compact rule for reverse engineering.
Right. The difficulty of reverse engineering any human skill is directly proportional to how long that skill has been evolving in animals.
So the things that seem effortless to us, because they're ancient, optimized, and unconscious, are the hardest to replicate.
The effortlessness is the dead giveaway. It's the sign of incredible, hidden computational complexity.
That completely reframes our idea of genius, then. It means the most computationally valuable intelligence we have isn't writing a symphony, it's just standing on a moving boat without falling over.
Or recognizing the subtle emotional cue that stops an argument from happening. It forces you to admit that common sense, which we usually dismiss, is actually the product of 1 billion years of successful biological computation. It is the most complex thing we've ever tried to build in AI.
This realization about complexity, it wasn't an overnight thing. It was this devastating discovery that unfolded over decades. And that takes us right into the history of AI research. We have to go back to the 60s and 70s, a time of just wild optimism.
Oh, supreme confidence. I mean, the founding fathers of AI, people like Herbert Simon, they were making predictions that seem almost funny now.
Right.
Simon, I think it was 1965, he famously predicted that machines will be capable within 20 years of doing any work a man can do. The feeling was that true artificial general intelligence, AGI, was just around the corner.
And to be fair, that optimism was fueled by some real early wins. They were cracking some tough problems with what we call symbolic AI.
They were. They built programs using formal, step-by-step rules to handle logic, algebra, and especially games like checkers and chess. The success of these early programs seemed to prove their whole approach was right.
And since those things take a lot of concentration for humans, they just assumed they had conquered the peak of cognition.
That was the fatal false assumption that crept in. The assumption was that all cognitive tasks were on a single scale of difficulty. Since logic and math were hard for people, they thought, okay, once we solve these hard problems, the easy stuff like vision and walking will just fall into place.
But the paradox showed them that was completely wrong. They had solved the problems that were easy for machines because they were neat and rule-based, not the problems needed for general intelligence.
And that failure to generalize from those early wins led straight to the AI winter in the 80s. The funding just dried up.
Why, though? Why did it fail so badly?
Because the mechanism was wrong. Symbolic AI depended on a programmer explicitly writing out every single rule, step by step, if this, then that. And that works perfectly for chess, where the rules are finite and known. But try writing the rules for recognize a cat.
Right. What does a cat look like? From the side, curled up, in the dark.
The visual input is messy. It's infinite. It's all about context. The complexity just exploded beyond what any human programmer can possibly formalize.
It's that difference between sequential and parallel processing, isn't it? Chess is sequential, one move then the next. But seeing is massively parallel. It's all happening at once.
Exactly. Trying to solve these messy, parallel problems with sequential symbolic code is like trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole. It led to the collapse of all those big expert systems in the 70s and 80s that were supposed to revolutionize medicine or geology, but just fell apart when they hit any real-world ambiguity.
And this whole mess was analyzed brilliantly by Rodney Brooks, who, like Moravec, was looking at why these symbolic AI robots were failing so miserably.
Yeah, Brooks basically pointed out that the entire field had this massive intellectual bias. He said early AI research defined intelligence as the things that highly educated male scientists found challenging.
That's a brutally honest take. So what did that definition leave out?
Almost everything required for physical survival. They cared about chess, complex math proofs, abstract stuff. They completely excluded things a 4- or 5-year-old can do without thinking. Navigating a room, telling a cup from a chair in different lighting, just basic common sense.
They wrote off the complexity of a child because it was too easy for them to do consciously.
They were so focused on the tiny, fragile chimney in the intellectual castle that they ignored the massive, complex foundation holding it up. And that foundation is made of survival, not pure logic.
So this frustration with symbolic AI led Brooks to a totally new direction in the mid-80s.
A radical new direction, which he called Nouvelle AI.
A complete break. Instead of coating the veneer, he started at the foundation.
Absolutely. Brooks decided to build intelligent machines that just left out what everyone thought was the intelligence part of AI, the central abstract brain. His motto was no cognition, just sensing and action.
And he developed a new mechanism for that, the subsumption architecture.
He did, and it was designed specifically to get around the problems of symbolic AI. The old way, all sensory data went to one big central processor, which would try to build a huge model of the world, a huge bottleneck, and then decide on one action. Brooks saw that was way too slow for real-time survival.
So what did subsumption architecture do differently?
It was layered in parallel. Instead of one big brain, he had these small, independent behaviors running at the same time. The lowest layer might just be avoid obstacles. The next layer up could be wander around. A higher layer could be explore this room.
And the higher levels could override the lower ones.
Right, they could subsume them, but they didn't need the lower levels to feed into some big central world model. The obstacle avoidance circuit could run instantly, on its own, without having to consult the machine's thought process.
So he gave primacy to the foundational real-time algorithms of perception and movement, just like Moravec's paradox suggested he should.
Exactly. Nouvelle AI was the engineering response to the paradox. It was the acknowledgement that you have to solve the billion years of evolutionary experience, the sensing and acting first. If you can't see a chair or walk across a room, being able to play chess is computationally useless in the real world.
It fundamentally taught AI that intelligence is embodied, not just symbolic. So that shift to embodied AI and connectionist models, things that mimic neural networks, that finally started to point the way forward. But for decades, the paradox still basically held true, Replicating perception was a computational nightmare.
It was.
So let's jump forward to the 2020s. What changed? What is finally challenging the paradox today?
It's almost entirely down to one thing: brute force, raw computing power. Moore's law, the idea that computing power doubles roughly every 2 years. It finally gave us the resources we needed to tackle those ancient, massively parallel problems.
And the scale is just astonishing. You mentioned Moravec actually predicted this would happen, right?
He did. Back in the 70s, Moravec calculated that to simulate just the basic sensory processing of a human brain, you'd need a computer running at about 100 million instructions per second, or MIS/PS.
Which seemed impossible back then.
Totally impossible.
Yeah.
But by the 2020s, a standard consumer GPU runs at trillions of operations per second. And it's often optimized for exactly the kind of parallel math that neural networks need. We are hundreds of millions of times faster than we were in the 70s.
And that immense increase in raw power, that's what let us finally tackle perception.
Right.
We can now sort of brute force the billion years of experience by just feeding enormous amounts of data into these massive neural networks.
Right. We train them to learn the patterns of vision and sound instead of trying to explicitly code the rules like they did with symbolic AI.
And the big breakthroughs, like deep learning in the early 2010s with datasets like ImageNet, that showed if you have enough parallel power from GPUs and enough data, the network can basically reverse engineer those fuzzy perceptual patterns that beat symbolic AI for so long.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a really compelling modern take on all this from the machine learning researcher Andrew Ng. He came up with a highly imperfect rule of thumb in 2017 that speaks directly to the paradox today. What was it?
N suggested that almost anything a typical human can do with less than 1 second of mental thought, we can probably now, or in the near future, automate using AI.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack that. The skills that take less than 1 second of thought, that's exactly it. That's the ancient, unconscious, optimized stuff Moravec was talking about.
It is.
Quickly classifying an image, recognizing a voice, judging if an object is close or far away.
Is the paradox dissolving or maybe inverting itself? The very skills that used to be impossible for machines because they were fast and unconscious are now the first things falling to these huge parallel AI systems.
So computers finally learned how to act like that 2-year-old. They can tell a cup from a chair effortlessly, and they did it by abandoning symbolic logic for massive pattern recognition.
Precisely. And that's why modern AI is so good at these high-speed perceptual tasks. Instant image tagging, the recognition systems in self-driving cars, voice ID, translation. But, and this is crucial, the entire paradox hasn't vanished.
What do you mean?
We've gotten really good at narrow, specific perceptual tasks. But linking all those tasks into the general, flexible common sense of a toddler, that's still the frontier.
So we've solved the individual components of the sensor-motor foundation. We can build a system that sees, or one that moves, or one that hears, but getting them to work together fluidly, that's still the hard part.
That's where we are now. The paradox is still a powerful way to understand complexity, even as we start to conquer its original examples. And it's why modern cognitive science is so focused on embodied cognition, the idea that you can't separate higher thought from the body and its interaction with the world.
You can't simulate intelligence until you can simulate the general competence that comes from a billion years of physical interaction.
Exactly. The ultimate benchmark for AI isn't chess anymore. It's the general competence it takes to walk into a strange house, open the fridge, and find a snack. That effortless, general, embodied competence. That's the real test for artificial general intelligence.
And that still feels a long way off.
It does. Because that competence relies on these deep internal models for setting goals and predicting things, which are part of that same unconscious processing. We can recognize objects, but we still struggle to replicate the intuitive ability to set the right goals, or guess what others are thinking, with that same effortless fluidity. Those are the deeper, ancient skills still waiting to be conquered.
We've covered a huge amount of ground today, from the early hubris of Herbert Simon to Andrew Ng's inverted rule of thumb. Let's try to recap the absolute core takeaways from this deep dive into Moravec's paradox.
I think the central finding, the anchor for this whole discussion, is this. The difficulty of a task for a machine is inversely related to its evolutionary age in us. The skills nature spent the longest perfecting, perception, movement, common sense, are the hardest for us to reverse engineer because they're so optimized and unconscious.
And the history of AI has just been this long, humbling process of correcting that fundamental misunderstanding of where complexity really is. Early researchers mistook the slow, conscious effort of abstract thought for the peak of intelligence.
And they dangerously overlook the invisible, powerful algorithms running our everyday census.
Which force these vital shifts, like Rodney Brooks's Nouvelle AI, breaking away from that sequential logic. It was a direct, practical response to the paradox, admitting you have to build the massive foundation of sensing and acting first, before the veneer of abstract thought can even work properly.
And while Moore's law and deep learning have finally given us the brute force to start conquering those ancient perceptual skills, the fast, sub-second tasks, the paradox is still a really powerful tool for defining what true general intelligence is. We can solve specific perception problems now, but the seamless, fluid integration of them all, that common sense that's still ahead of us.
Which leaves us with a provocative final thought then, about the nature of unconscious processing. We've established that our most powerful, complex intelligence is in the stuff we don't even realize we're doing.
Right. Recognizing a voice, setting a goal based on some implicit context, navigating a crowd while predicting where people are going to move.
So if today's AI is conquering those sub-second classification tasks, but it still needs this immense explicit training and data, what does that imply about the vast, unknown computational power needed to replicate true, flexible, general intelligence? We've only just started to map that billion years of experience stored in the hardware of our brains.
The real frontier of AI isn't abstract logic anymore. It's the invisible, optimized logic of the everyday.
Something to think about the next time you instinctively duck under a low-hanging branch while carrying a heavy box. You just performed a computational feat worthy of that billion-year legacy, and it cost your conscious mind absolutely nothing.
Indeed. It's time we all started appreciating the prodigious Olympian inside all of us. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We are about to do a deep dive into an institution that hasn't just witnessed history, but for, over 2.5 centuries, has literally been setting the price of history itself.
Christie's, the legendary British auction house.
Exactly.
And, it's more than just an auction house. It's really this deep intersection of global wealth, cultural heritage, and, as our sources show, a fair bit of controversy.
Oh, absolutely. It's where art, history, and just billions of dollars all collide. And our source material today gives us this stunning, nearly 260-year look at the company. I mean, from its founding in the 18th century right up to its place now as this financial and even technological giant.
And when you say giant, that's not an exaggeration. The scale is almost hard to comprehend.
Well, let's start with the numbers then. Because looking at the data, just a couple of years ago, in 2022, Christie's recorded a sale total of $8.4 billion US.
$8.4 billion. And that wasn't just a good year for them. That was an all-time high for any auction house, globally.
Ever.
And yeah, the market softened a little bit after that, but even their 2024 revenue was still topping $5.7 billion.
So what does that scale tell you?
It tells you that even with all the economic ups and downs, the market for the absolute rarest, most valuable objects in the world is, it's incredibly robust. And it's concentrated in just a couple of major players, like Christie's.
So our mission today is really to pull those figures apart. We want to understand the nuts and bolts of how they do that, how they generate that kind of revenue, the commission structures, their global operations, and the big ethical and legal controversies that keep shaping their reputation.
And how a 250-year-old company stays ahead of modern wealth.
Right.
And if you want to see that wealth in, one single moment, you have to look at the transaction that just completely redefined the ceiling of the art market.
The Salvator Mundi moment.
Yeah.
November 15th, 2017. New York. I mean, tell us the numbers one more time, because even now, they are just staggering.
The sale of Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, it landed at a final price of $450.3 million.
Wow.
And that figure, which is critical, includes the buyer's premium, the commission that Christie's gets. It is still to this day the highest price ever paid for a painting.
And who was the buyer?
It was sold to Saudi Prince Badir bin Abdullah Al Saud. That one sale, that one painting, generated more revenue for Christie's than many entire companies make in a year.
It's just such an abstract number, $450 million.
Right.
But it really crystallizes the level of trust and the volume they command. And yet, for all that modernity, the company's origins are they're deep in 18th century London.
And that's the fascinating part. The story starts with James Christie. The official company history says it was founded in 1766. December 5th was the first sale.
Okay.
But if you dig into the historical sources, you look at old newspaper ads from London, you can actually trace James Christie conducting sales as far back as 1759, maybe 1762.
So 1766 is the official birthday, but the business was already up and running.
Exactly. It was already catering to the huge new wealth of George and England.
So it's a truly British institution, and it's always been anchored to a very specific, very high society part of London.
Precisely. The main headquarters has been on King Street in St. James since 1823.
Wow, since 1823.
That continuity is a huge part of their brand. James Christie the Younger took over from his father, and he made sure the business, the location, stayed right in the heart of the British aristocracy and the wealthy merchant class. They were the customers.
And the ownership structure. I find that really tells you a lot about how the modern art market works. It wasn't always this private empire, right?
Not at all. That transition is so important. For a long time, Christie's was a public company. It was listed on the London Stock Exchange from 1973 all the way to 1999.
And then everything changed.
Everything changed in 1998. Francois Pinault's holding company, Groupe Artemis, came in, bought a big stake, and then bought the rest of it. The whole deal valued the house at $1.2 billion.
So after 99, it goes from being this public company, accountable to shareholders, having to report profits every quarter,
right,
to being a privately owned piece of one of the world's biggest luxury groups.
Yeah.
What does a change like that let them do?
It gives them immense strategic freedom, total freedom. Since then, they don't have to report their profits publicly. They only publish their sale totals twice a year.
Which means?
It means Artemis can use Christie's not just to make money year to year, but as a long-term strategic tool for wealth preservation, for market influence, for reputation. They can pour money into new markets like Asia or into tech without investors breathing down their necks about a dip in quarterly returns.
So the focus shifted. It wasn't about profit margins anymore.
Not at all. It became about sale volume and sheer cultural power.
So let's talk about that modern operation, this global business of taste and value. I mean, if you're transacting billions, you need an infrastructure that goes way beyond King Street.
Oh, absolutely. Their global reach is, it's genuinely remarkable. It's designed to capture wealth wherever it pops up.
So how many offices are we talking about?
They have offices in 46 countries. But the real high-stakes sales, the critical stuff, that's concentrated in their 8 main sale rooms.
London, New York.
London, New York, of course. Paris, Hong Kong, Milan, Geneva, and now Shanghai and Dubai. This footprint lets them source art from one continent and connect it with buyers on another, all at the same time. Maximizes competition.
And this strategy needs constant tweaking, even in London, their home base. I'm thinking of the closure of their South Kensington sale room in 2017.
That was a really clear strategic signal. South Kensington is for the middle market.
What do you mean by middle market?
Things that sold in the low tens of thousands, not the millions. The decision to close it was part of this big restructuring. They basically said the part of the market was shrinking.
So what do?
They pivoted. Christie's decided to focus all its physical energy on the absolute top-end sales at King Street and then aggressively push the middle market onto their online sales platform.
Interesting. So they shed the physical infrastructure for the middle ground.
Exactly. And while they were pulling back in one place, they were doubling down somewhere else. Aggressively.
And that somewhere else is clearly Asia.
Without a doubt. The sources point to this massive, deliberate investment in Hong Kong. This is their big bet on future growth, on where the next generation of billionaire collectors is.
So what are they actually building there?
They're moving their Hong Kong headquarters into this huge, custom-built space in the Henderson Tower. It's over 50,000 square feet.
50,000.
To put that in perspective, that's about the same size as their world-famous historic headquarters in London. They're basically building a second flagship, and they're going to hold auctions there year-round, not just seasonally.
So Hong Kong is becoming a central pillar, not just an outpost.
It's a statement that the center of gravity for high-end collecting is shifting east.
Okay, now let's get into the money. How do they actually turn these massive sales into billions in revenue? It all comes down to the buyer's premium, which, I think most people know is a fee, but the structure is. It's really complex.
It is. The buyer's premium is how they make their money, and it's basically a progressive, tiered tax that the buyer pays on top of the final hammer price.
A sliding scale.
A sliding scale. And they are constantly fine-tuning it to capture as much revenue as possible, especially from the very top of the market. Back in 2008, for instance, they charged 25% on the first $50,000. By 2013, they'd push that up 25% on the first $75,000.
So they're always adjusting the brackets.
Always.
Let's break down the most recent structure, the one from 2023, because I think if you understand this, you understand their entire monetization machine.
Absolutely. So as of 2023, it works in 3 distinct tiers. First, you pay 26% on the hammer price up to $1 million.
Okay, 26% on the first million.
Then the rate drops to 21% for the portion of the price between $1 million and $6 million.
And then for the really big ticket items.
Everything over $6 million, the buyer pays just 15%.
Wait, hold on. Why does the rate drop for the most expensive part? Wouldn't you want to charge more?
That's the counterintuitive genius of it. The rate per dollar drops, but the total dollar amount in that tier is so enormous. Let's do a quick example. Say a painting sells for $10 million at the hammer.
Okay, $10 million piece.
On that first million, Christie's takes 26%, so that's $260,000.
Right.
Then on the next 5 million, from 1 million to 6 million, they take 21%. That's another $1.05 million. And finally, on that last 4 million, over the $6 million mark, they charge 15%. So that's another $600,000.
So on a $10 million sale, Christie's premium is almost $1.91 million. The buyer is actually paying nearly $12 million.
Exactly. The scale is optimized. It captures a high percentage from the middle, but it still generates enormous total revenue from the top without feeling like it's punishing the billionaires who are their most important clients. It's a beautiful machine.
And beyond the structure, the market itself has changed. What people want is different. Impressionist art used to be the engine of the market in the 80s.
It was. But by 2012, that had been completely supplanted. Contemporary art, works from the 1960s onward, became Christie's top category.
And what came after that?
Asian art was third. And that transition just shows you where global wealth is and what a new generation of collectors cares about. They want cultural relevance now, living artists. The value is moving away from the 19th century masters.
And that must tie into this pivot towards what they call curated events.
Yes. If you can't just sell an old master painting and create buzz, you create buzz by building a narrative. These curated events are theme-based. They mix genres, time periods, media.
To tell a story.
To tell a story or to fit a collector's specific aesthetic. It's also a response to falling income from the more traditional, less glamorous auctions. It's about selling a lifestyle, a sophisticated collection, not just historical artifacts.
And then there's the other side of the business, the part we don't see. The private treaty sales.
This is a huge but often invisible part of their business. It speaks to this need for total discretion among the ultra-wealthy.
So how big is it?
Well, these treaty sales jumped 53% in just the first half of 2012. They made up over 18% of their total turnover. When buyers want total privacy, the auction house just acts as an exclusive broker.
Can you give an example?
A key one was the $68 million deal they brokered in 2007 for Thomas Eakins' painting, The Gross Clinic. They moved it to joint ownership between 2 Philadelphia museums.
Ah, so it's not always private collectors.
Not at all. Discretion, privacy, speed. That's the currency in that market.
Okay, let's get to the fun part, the sheer shock and awe of the sales themselves. We've talked about the Da Vinci, but in the last decade, the prices for contemporary and 20th century art have just exploded.
They really have. The list is just a testament to the competition for true cultural icons. Take Andy Warhol's shot Sage Blue Marilyn.
Right.
It sold in 2022 for $195 million.
$195 million.
And with that one sale, it became the most expensive work of American art and the most expensive piece of 20th century art ever sold at auction.
Just an incredible combination of an iconic artist and an iconic subject.
Exactly. And then you have Picasso, the great European modern master. His painting, Les Femmes d'Alger, sold in 2015 for just under $180 million. And even before that, Francis Bacon's triptych, 3 Studies of Lucian Freud, went for $142.4 million in 2013.
And that was a record at the time.
It was, for a short while. The point is, these records aren't outliers. They are constantly being reset by this institution.
It's clear the price for a single painting just keeps going up.
Yeah.
But sometimes the sale of an entire collection is even more significant.
Oh, definitely. When a massive concentration of wealth and cultural capital gets released back onto the market all at once, it's a huge moment.
Like the Paul Allen collection.
The biggest collection sale in history. November 2022, the Microsoft co-founder had an incredible eye, and the whole thing brought in over $1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion. I mean, that's just, it's hard to process. What does a sale like that tell us about the art market's appetite?
It tells us two things. First, that the depth of wealth out there is vast enough to absorb that much art without crashing prices. And second, it shows the intense competition for genuinely rare museum-quality pieces.
And I heard that multiple works went for over $100 million.
Six different works sold for over $100 million each in a single auction series.
Wow. What were some of them?
Well, you had Georges Seurat's Pointillist work, La Poseuse Ensemble, which went for $149 million, and Paul Cézanne's landscape, La Montagne Sainte-Victoire, sold for $138 million. These are prices that were, frankly, unthinkable for works from that period until this sale happened.
And where did all that money go?
The proceeds went to various philanthropies, which provides this fascinating contrast to the massive wealth being generated in the room.
And before Allen's collection, there was the Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Berger collection back in 2009. That was transformative too, but in a different way.
That auction was colossal. It was in Paris over 3 days, and it raised 370 million euros, a record at the time. It really showed that Christie's could monetize a whole aesthetic vision, not just paintings.
Right. It had sculpture, furniture.
It set records across so many categories, for Brancusi, for Matisse, and crucially, for design.
The famous Dragon's Armchair.
Yes, by Eileen Gray. That one share, a piece of 20th century decorative art, sold for 21.9 million euros.
Incredible.
It just shows that if you have scarcity, provenance, and a great story, design can command prices like a minor master painting. These collection sales are so important because they show the auction house can market an entire lifetime of obsession.
But Christie's isn't just about art and furniture. They're the marketplace for anything rare. Right. And some of the non-art records are, well, they're the real surprises.
The sheer breadth is extraordinary. Take fossils.
Okay.
In 2020, they sold Stan, one of the most complete T-Rex skeletons in the world, for $31.8 million.
$31 million for a dinosaur.
A world record at the time? And why? Because a perfect T-Rex is this universal cultural item. It combines scarcity, spectacle, and science.
And what about historical documents?
In 2012, they sold George Washington's personal annotated copy of the Acts of Congress.
The one with the Constitution in it.
The one with the Constitution and a draft of the Bill of Rights. It sold for $9.8 million. A record. Because it wasn't just a document, it was a physical artifact with Washington's own notes on it.
And then you have the memorabilia and luxury space.
Which feeds that same appetite. One of Audrey Hepburn's black Givenchy dresses from Breakfast at Tiffany's sold for almost £500,000.
Wow.
The Oppenheimer Blue Diamond set a record for a jewel in 2016. The Heidi Horton jewelry collection set another record in 2023, bringing in $201 million. It's proof that if an object has a unique story, is incredibly rare, and is linked to cultural icons, Christie's is the place its price will be broken.
Okay, but we have to shift focus now. Because underneath these massive valuations, there's an uncomfortable reality. The history of Christie's is filled with some major ethical and legal challenges.
And this is where it gets really interesting. When you operate at that level, the scrutiny is... it's merciless.
You have to start with the price-fixing scandal.
Yeah.
In 2000, it just pulled back the curtain on the anti-competitive nature of this world.
It was a monumental breach of trust, a spectacular display of illegal collusion. It came out that Christie's and their main rival, Sotheby's, had been secretly conspiring to fix the commission rates they charged sellers.
Which is completely illegal.
Completely. It's designed to eliminate competition and force sellers to accept inflated rates. But the outcome for the two houses was, well, it was drastically different.
And that was all because of how Christie's responded.
It's a textbook case in crisis management, though, ethically murky. Christie's got full immunity from criminal prosecution in the U.S. because they confessed early. They agreed to cooperate fully with the FBI.
So they threw their competitor under the bus.
In a way, yes. A key employee provided evidence, and that left Sotheby's completely exposed.
And what happened to them?
It was devastating for Sotheby's. Their top executives faced criminal charges, A. Alfred Taubman, the chairman, and Dede Brooks, the CEO, they both got jail time.
Jail time.
Now, both houses paid a huge civil settlement, $512 million, to compensate clients. But the criminal convictions against Sotheby's executives gave Christie's this huge competitive advantage. The public saw them as the ones who had come clean.
And yet, even after that, the criticism continues. The sources talk about an embarrassing history of a lack of transparency around provenance.
And provenance, the documented history of ownership, is the lifeblood of the art market. If that history is murky, the value is poisoned. And the lack of transparency makes it look like the auction house is facilitating the trade of tainted objects.
Let's talk about Nazi-looted art. That's a battleground that just never seems to go away.
It's a continuous liability for them. Back in 2003, Christie's was heavily criticized for refusing to reveal the location of a Gestapo-looted painting. It had belonged to a Jewish banker in Vienna.
So they were shielding the current owners.
They were, until the Jewish community of Vienna filed a successful lawsuit and forced them to disclose it, which led to its restitution.
And this isn't just old history. This happened again very recently in France.
In 2023, a French court ordered Christie's to return a Dutch painting called The Penitent Magdalene. It had been looted in 1942 from a man named Lionel Hauser in Paris.
And Christie's had sold it.
They'd sold it in London in 2005 with no verified provenance. They even tried to settle with the family, offering them half the sale price, but the heirs refused and they won in court. It just shows that these moral and legal obligations, they don't expire.
And beyond wartime looting, there's this ongoing scrutiny over looted antiquities from other parts of the world.
It's a direct result of their global reach. The most notorious case was probably in 2009 with two imperial bronze zodiac sculptures
From the Summer Palace in Beijing.
looted by European forces in 1860. Even though they were part of the famous Yves Saint Laurent collection, China immediately demanded their return as irreplaceable cultural property.
And the problem still happens today. They've had to withdraw items linked to criminals.
Yes. In June 2020, they had to pull 4 Greek and Roman antiquities from a sale because they were linked to convicted traffickers. That same month, they got backlash for selling Igbo figures from Nigeria and a Benin plaque.
Also tied to looting.
Tied to the Benin expedition of 1897 and the Nigerian Civil War. These controversies just show how difficult and risky it is to handle items whose origins are tied to colonial conflict.
And this is so critical that even one of their biggest private sales, the Gilgamesh tablet, ended in a lawsuit from the buyer.
That's right. Hobby Lobby sued them in 2020. They had bought the tablet privately from Christie's in 2014, and they alleged that Christie's sold it with a fake provenance.
So, given all this, what is Christie's official requirement now? How do they try to protect themselves?
Their official line is that they require verifiable documented provenance, showing the object left its source country before the year 2000.
The year 2000.
It's a legal firewall. It's designed to protect them from being accused of handling things that were illegally trafficked after that date. But of course, that completely sidesteps the huge issue of things looted during wartime or colonial periods before 2000, which is why these controversies just keep happening.
Okay, so let's move from those moral challenges to the operational ones. I mean, when you're the custodian of billions of dollars of irreplaceable art, storage itself becomes a massive business.
Which is why they have Christie's Fine Art Storage Services, CFASS, its wholly owned subsidiary. And the scale of their needs is just immense. Their flagship facility is a 250,000 square foot warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn.
And this isn't just some warehouse.
Not at all. They spent $30 million converting an old building into a 6-story fortress. It has stringent security, environmental controls, constant 70 degrees, 50% humidity.
The kind of things you need for priceless art.
Essential. But they also have a key facility in London that has something called exempted status.
Okay, pause on that. Why is exempted status so important?
This is a huge piece of global art finance. It allows collectors from outside the EU to store their art indefinitely in the UK without having to pay UK import duties and VAT.
It's a tax haven, basically.
It creates a vast, secure financial hub where art can be held and traded without triggering massive tax bills. It facilitates billions in trade. CFAS is a crucial part of that infrastructure.
But even with all that tech and security, Mother Nature turned out to be their biggest challenge.
Hurricane Sandy in 2012 was a defining operational failure for them. The Brickland facility, despite all its features, was right near the water and was hit by the storm surge.
Catastrophic damage.
Absolutely. It led to client defections and a lot of intense legal action.
And the lawsuits claimed gross negligence. What was the basis for that?
In 2013, AXA Art Insurance sued them over damage to a collection. Later that year, another insurer, representing the Leroy Neiman Foundation, filed another lawsuit claiming over $10 million in damages.
And the negligence claim was what?
It centered on whether CFSS had taken adequate preventative steps, even though there were clear warnings about how severe the hurricane was going to be. It just underscored the immense financial liability they have.
So they're battling the physical risks of hurricanes and the historical risks of provenance. In response to that provenance issue, how are they trying to use technology to secure these histories?
They're investing heavily in blockchain technology. It's a direct response to all that criticism about a lack of transparency. They started this back in 2018, offering what they call digital passports or certificates of ownership.
And the idea there is that the record can't be changed later on.
Exactly. Blockchain creates a clear, unchangeable, transparent ledger of ownership that anyone can access. It makes it almost impossible for someone to insert a fake name or a false sale date into an object's history. It's about providing security and rebuilding trust.
And this is accelerating. It's moving from a concept to actual practice.
Yeah.
We saw 2 big auctions in 2024 that showcased this.
Right. In 2024, Christie's New York held 2 critical auctions. First, they sold photographs from the Trevor Traina collection, and they worked with a Web3 wallet provider to link the physical art to digital ownership. Second, and maybe more significantly, they auctioned a piece called Ascend, which is a digital work inscribed on Bitcoin's Ordinals protocol.
So a piece of crypto art.
And it was the first time something like that was sold in a live traditional auction at Christie's. It's a clear signal that they're not just securing physical provenance, they are actively trading in native digital assets now.
That's a huge step. Before we wrap up, we should touch on the shift in their educational arm. They consciously got rid of their expensive degree programs.
Yes, this was a very strategic and very public decision. Christie's Education used to offer these exclusive, very expensive master's degrees. By 2019, they phased them out completely.
And why?
The reasoning was profound. After the big social justice movements, Christie's acknowledged the severe lack of racial diversity in the art world and admitted that their expensive elite degree programs only exacerbated those inequities. They were a financial barrier to entry.
So they got rid of that high-cost path to knowledge.
And they pivoted. They now offer more accessible, non-degree programs like masterclass certificates online and in more locations. It's an explicit attempt to democratize access to the knowledge you need to succeed in their world without the exclusive high-cost barrier.
Okay, so if we try to synthesize this entire 259-year history, what's the big takeaway?
I think what stands out is this profound, almost impossible dichotomy that defines Christie's.
How so?
On one hand, you have this ancient, sophisticated institution generating record-breaking wealth, the $8.4 billion years, the $450 million Da Vinci.
Right.
And on the other hand, it is constantly battling these deep-seated historical and operational liabilities.
It's the juxtaposition. The record-breaking diamond sale set against the fallout from gross negligence during a hurricane.
Or the moral imperative to deal with Nazi-looted art decades after the fact.
Precisely. They survived the price-fixing scandal only because they confessed. And they continually have to fight to maintain credibility over provenance, whether it's antiquities from the Middle East or artifacts from colonial Africa.
So what does this all mean for the future of the market? I mean, the push into blockchain, the huge Hong Kong expansion, it all shows a dedication to modernizing.
It shows a commitment to staying relevant. Christie's knows the next generation of billionaires requires absolute digital security and global liquidity.
Good.
But the recurring scandals emphasize a deeper truth that technology can't just erase. The market value of an object is often inseparable from its traumatic or illicit history. And that tension between profit and conscience, that remains their most persistent challenge. It is the ultimate collision of commerce and conscience, played out on a multi-billion-dollar stage.
Indeed. It forces us all to ask some really critical questions about how we value history itself.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. Given the scale of global wealth flowing through auction houses like this, and the company's commitment to securing provenance with blockchain, can new technology ever truly reconcile the painful physical history of looted works? Or is this inherent tension between massive profits and ethically murky history, is that just the unavoidable cost of doing business at the highest, most exclusive level of the global art market? It's a question that Christie's and the world's elite collectors are trying to answer with every single hammerfall. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on, well, what might just be the most recognizable grouping of stars in the entire Northern Hemisphere.
Ursa Major, the Great Bear.
Exactly. Or, for most of us, the Big Dipper.
Yep.
It's probably the first thing you ever learned to find in the night sky.
The shortcut to the North Star, right.
But that's just scratching the surface. What we want to do in this deep dive is show that this collection of stars is so much more than a simple landmark. It's a time capsule.
It really is. I mean, it's guided sailors for millennia. It's the anchor for myths that stretch back, maybe 13,000 years?
And on top of all that, it is just jam-packed with some of the most spectacular deep sky objects you can imagine.
Total treasure trove.
So our mission today is to go past that familiar shape and really explore the Great Bear, from its prehistoric roots all the way to modern astronomical discoveries. We want to find out why this one constellation is, well, maybe the most important star group in human history.
It's a fantastic celestial anchor, and you really hit on the right word there. History. Ursa Major is not some modern invention. Its lineage is just incredibly ancient.
We're talking really old.
We are. It was one of the original 48 constellations that were codified by the Greco-Roman astronomer Ptolemy, and that was way back in the 2nd century AD.
And even he was drawing on older sources.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was drawing heavily on astronomical works from, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians. It goes way back.
That continuity is just mind-blowing. The idea that the pattern we see tonight is the same one Ptolemy was looking at almost 2,000 years ago. It really puts things in perspective.
It does, and yet it's still critically important in modern astronomy.
Right.
Its name, Ursa Major, literally just means greater bear.
To distinguish it from Ursa Minor, the lesser bear.
Exactly, and it is huge. Today, it's recognized as the 3rd largest of all 88 modern constellations. It covers this massive patch of sky, almost 1,300 square degrees.
And the key thing for anyone listening in the Northern Hemisphere is that you can always see it. If you're in, say, the U.S., Canada, or Europe, it's always there.
It's what we call circumpolar. It never fully sinks below the horizon. It just circles and circles around Polaris.
That constant presence is what made it so reliable, I imagine.
Absolutely. That's why it was such a dependable guide, and why you can see it any time of year. Its best viewing time, when it's really high and clear, is around 9 p.m. in April.
But even in the dead of winter, it's still up there, pointing the way north.
Always.
Okay, let's unpack this iconic shape. Section 1. The anatomy of the Dipper and the road to Polaris. The 7 brightest stars are what we all recognize, but what's so cool is how different cultures saw totally different things.
Yes, exactly. In the U.S. and Canada, we see a ladle, so we call it the Big Dipper.
Simple enough.
But if you go to the U.K., they'll immediately call it the plow.
A farm tool.
Right. And historically, it was also called Charles's wain, or just the wagon. So you have a utensil, a tool, a vehicle, but they all capture that same basic shape.
And in the grander picture of the bear, this shape, the bowl and the handle, is supposed to be the bear's.
What, its hindquarters and its tail?
Its hindquarters and its impossibly long tail.
Right. Bears do not have long tails. That always struck me as odd.
It's a total visual quirk. It suggests that the tail part, the handle, was probably tacked on by later astronomers like Ptolemy to, make the stars fit the pre-existing story of a bear.
Forcing the stars to fit the myth.
It's a classic case of that. But if we actually look at the stars themselves, moving from the ladle's bowl out through the handle, you start to see just how diverse this group is.
So let's do a quick breakdown. We'll start with the 2 stars that form the outer edge of the bowl, the pointer stars.
First up is Duba, Alpha Ursae Majoris. It's the 2nd brightest star in the whole constellation, and its name literally means the bear in Arabic.
So its name is the constellation?
Pretty much.
Sure.
And right next to it, making the other pointer, is Merak, Beta Yuma. Its name means the loins of the bear.
Okay. then moving along the bottom of the bowl. You get fecta, which means thigh, and then connecting the bowl to the handle is migris.
Migris.
Yeah.
Its name is root of the tail, which is a perfect description. I heard it's the faintest of the 7.
It is, yeah. Now we get to the handle, starting with Alioth, Epsilon Yuma. This one's actually the brightest star in all of Ursa Major.
Brighter than Dubhe.
Just slightly, yeah. But what's really fascinating about Alioth is that it's the brightest example of what we call a chemically peculiar app star.
Chemically peculiar. Okay, that sounds dramatic. What does that mean?
Well, it is pretty dramatic. It has to do with magnetism. App stars have incredibly powerful magnetic fields, and these fields actually cause the chemical elements inside the star to separate.
So they sort themselves out.
Exactly. Heavier elements like silicon or strontium get pulled toward the magnetic poles, while lighter ones might get pushed to the equator. So as the star rotates, the amount of each element we see in its light spectrum seems to change.
Just like an optical illusion of shifting chemistry.
That's a perfect way to put it. And to add another layer of weirdness, the name Alioth itself is a historical mistake. It means black horse, but the name was actually corrupted and misassigned from a different star centuries ago.
That's wild. Okay, which brings us to the most famous pair in the handle, Mizar and Alcor.
The horse and rider, as the Arabs famously called them. Mizar is the main star, and Alcor is its fainter companion.
And this was an eye test, right?
A classic one. In many cultures, but especially for archers in ancient Arabian armies, being able to resolve those two separate points of light with the naked eye was a standard test of good vision.
A practical, everyday use for the stars. And then finally, at the very tip of the handle, the end of the tail.
You have Alkaid, the third brightest star in the constellation.
So those are the 7 stars.
Mm-hmm.
But the big aha moment comes when you realize how they're moving.
Yes. This is what blows people's minds. If you came back in, say, 50,000 years, the Big Dipper wouldn't look like a dipper at all.
Wait, so the shape isn't permanent? I think most of us just assume they're all connected and will stay that way forever.
And that's the big misconception. With 2 exceptions, Dubhe and Alkaid, the other 5 stars are actually moving together.
Together. Through space.
As a group. They're physically related. They form what astronomers call the Ursa Major moving group. They were likely born from the same cloud of gas and dust about 300 million years ago and are all traveling in the same direction.
So 5 of them are a cosmic family, and the 2 on the ends, Dubhe and Alkaid, are just cosmic neighbors passing by.
Exactly. They have completely different trajectories. So over thousands of years, their movement is going to stretch and warp the dipper shape until it's completely unrecognizable.
That's incredible. It's a reminder that we're just seeing one snapshot in a very, very long cosmic dance.
But for now, their most famous function is still navigation, and that relies entirely on those 2 outliers, Dubhe and Moravec.
The pointer stars. The method is so simple, but so effective.
Infallible. You just trace a line from Moravec through Dubhe, continue it for about 5 times that distance, and your eye lands directly on Polaris.
The North Star. True north.
Every time. And since Ursa Major is always visible, it's one of the fastest, most reliable ways to orient yourself, even today.
So these stars were essential.
Yeah.
But turning to the cultural side, it's amazing how other people saw completely different images in the sky.
Oh, absolutely. While we're fixated on the Dipper, pre-Islamic Arabs saw something totally different along the southern border of the constellation.
Not a bear or a ladle.
Not at all. They saw 3 pairs of stars that they imagined as the footprints of a leaping gazelle.
A leaping gazelle, that's so much more elegant than a bear with a long tail.
Isn't it? They called them the 3 leaps. And what's interesting is that the same 3-step pattern shows up elsewhere.
It traveled.
It seems so. In China, it's called Santai, and in India, Trivikrama. Both names mean something like 3 steps. It just shows you how different mythologies can spring from the same canvas of stars.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting for me. In Section 2, we're jumping from ancient navigation to the real cutting edge of cosmology, because Ursa Major is just full of incredible deep sky objects.
It is a phenomenal hunting ground for astronomers, and that's because it lies away from the plane of our own Milky Way.
So there's less dust and gas in the way, a clearer view.
A crystal clear window into the distant universe, which is why it hosts some of the brightest galaxies we can see.
And we have to start with the main event, Messier 81 and Messier 82.
The showstoppers. They're a pair of galaxies, part of the closest galaxy cluster to our own, only about 12 million light years away. and they are locked in a gravitational battle.
M81 Bode's galaxy is the pretty one, right? The perfect spiral.
It's a textbook grand design spiral. We see it nearly face-on, with these beautiful sweeping arms full of young, hot blue stars.
And M82 is the messy one, the cigar galaxy.
M82 is the dramatic one. We see it almost edge-on, and because of that gravitational tug-of-war with M81, it's undergoing what we call starburst.
Meaning it's forming stars at an insane rate.
An absolutely furious rate, maybe 10 times faster than our entire Milky Way. And all that violent activity is creating these massive stellar winds, or super winds, that are blowing out from the galaxy's disk.
Just blasting gas and dust out into space.
For thousands of light years, it's an incredibly energetic, violent place, which is why it was so exciting in 2014 when astronomers spotted a supernova, SN 2014, erupting inside M82.
A star exploding, visible from 12 million light years away.
Wow. It temporarily outshone its entire host galaxy. But the wonders don't stop there. You also have the pinwheel galaxy, M101.
Another stunning spiral. But much farther away, right?
Much farther, about 25 million light years. But M101 is enormous, almost twice the size of the Milky Way, and it's so full of bright star-forming regions that despite its distance, you can actually spot it with a decent pair of binoculars.
That's amazing. And we also have a local object, the Owl Nebula.
M97, a planetary nebula. It's the colorful, expanding shell of gas from a dying star, and it gets its name from two dark patches inside that look like a pair of glowing owl eyes. Really beautiful.
Beyond those famous ones, though, Ursa Major has galaxies that show us, well, the raw physics of the universe.
Yeah.
Supermassive black holes at work.
Yes, like NGC 3079. It's a starburst galaxy with this really distinct horseshoe-shaped structure right at its core.
And that horseshoe is a clue.
It's direct evidence of the supermassive black hole. The shape is created by powerful jets of material being blasted out by the black hole, carving a massive bubble in the surrounding gas.
You can literally see the black hole's influence.
You can. And then there's NGC 3310, another starburst galaxy. Its bright white color comes from an unusually high rate of star formation, and studying it has shown us that these starburst phases can last for hundreds of millions of years.
So it's more a marathon than a sprint.
Exactly. But for pure youth, there's a galaxy called ISWICKY 18.
Okay.
It's considered an astronomical infant. We think it's only about 4 million years old.
4 million. Our solar system is 4.5 billion years old. That's nothing.
It's a baby. It's still making its first generation of stars from almost pure hydrogen and helium. It's like a living laboratory for how the very first galaxies in the universe must have formed.
So we have ancient human myths and infant galaxies in the same patch of sky.
Right.
And the modern exploration doesn't stop there. We're also finding exoplanets.
Yes, several important systems. The benchmark is probably 47 Ursae Majoris. It's a star very similar to our sun, about 46 light years away.
And it has planets.
A confirmed 3-planet system. All of them are gas giants, like Jupiter. It's a really important system for comparison to our own.
But the really wild one is HD 8606b. That orbit is just insane.
It is an extreme case. It's a huge planet, 4 times the mass of Jupiter, and its orbit is incredibly eccentric. It swings from about Earth distance from the sun all the way in to just 6 times the star's own radius.
6 stellar radii. The heat must be unimaginable.
It experiences these massive flash heating events, but the really cool part is what's happening over time. We think it's a future hot Jupiter.
Meaning its orbit is changing.
It's being forced to change by something called the Kozai mechanism. The gravity of its companion star in the binary system is slowly forcing the orbit to become less eccentric and more circular over millions of years.
So we're watching a planet's entire orbital evolution in progress.
It's a phenomenal piece of cosmic mechanics at work.
Okay, so if we connect all this incredible science back to the bigger picture, that brings us to Section 3. The mythology. This is where Ursa Major becomes this deep cultural anchor for all of humanity.
It's the foundational layer. The Great Bear concept is so old that it's been reconstructed as a core Indo-European myth. It predates the dispersal of those people across Europe and Asia.
Which leads to this wild theory of the cosmic hunt.
Right. The idea that there's a shared oral tradition that goes back more than 13,000 years, deep into the Paleolithic. The reconstructed story is of a hunter pursuing a large animal, maybe an elk, not a bear, and the hunt is so intense it carries them up into the sky where the animal becomes the Big Dipper.
13,000 years. A story that survived the end of the Ice Age. That's just... I can't even wrap my head around that.
It speaks to the power and permanence of that shape in the sky. The Greeks, of course, later put their own dramatic spin on it.
The tragedy of Callisto.
Callisto, a nymph of Artemis, is assaulted by Zeus. His jealous wife Hera finds out, and as punishment, turns Callisto into a bear.
And then to prevent her own son, Arcas, from accidentally hunting and killing her, Zeus steps in.
He does. He places them both in the sky. Callisto as Ursa Major, the great bear, and her son Arcas as the constellation Buix, the bear keeper, forever watching over his mother.
But even with that tragic story, the Greeks knew its practical importance. You see it in Homer's Odyssey.
Exactly. Homer calls it Helike, the turning one, because it was the one constellation that never set, that never bathes in the ocean's waves. It was their constant rotating guide.
Now, if we jump over to Arabian folklore, the perspective shifts completely. They didn't see a hunt, they saw a funeral.
A very somber one. They called it the Greater Funeral Procession. The 4 stars at the bowl are the bier, and the 3 stars of the handle are the mourners following it.
And they're chasing someone.
They're locked in an eternal pursuit. They're chasing the murderer of their father, who is represented by Aljude, the North Star, a cosmic story of vengeance that circles the pole every single night.
So different. Meanwhile, in India, it's a symbol of wisdom.
The Hindu tradition knows it as Saptarshi, the 7 sages. Each star represents a divine rishi, one of the mind-born sons of Brahma who hold all cosmic knowledge.
And the records of this are ancient.
Some of the oldest in the world. The first mention is in the Rig Veda, from around 1500 BCE. And their tradition even incorporates the pointer stars. They're seen as a divine gift from Lord Vishnu to a young sage, Dhruva, who became the North Star.
So it's both spiritual and practical. Then in East Asia, in China, it becomes a set of tools.
A set of celestial instruments, yeah. They called it Biiglu, the North Dipper. Each star had a functional name. The pivot, the pearl, the balance, the measuring rod. The sky was a divine machine for governing the universe.
I love that. And the star at the end of the handle, Al-Qaeda, had this really ominous nickname.
It did. It was called the Star of Military Defeat.
Seriously?
Yeah. Ancient military strategists believed that marching your army in the direction it pointed was incredibly bad luck, so they would literally plan campaigns to avoid it.
The stars directly influencing battlefield decisions. Finally, let's look at the North American and Northern European traditions, because they often come back to that ancient theme of the hunt.
The Iroquois tradition is a great example. They see the 3 handle stars not as a tail, but as 3 hunters pursuing the great bear.
And they have their gear with them.
They do. The first hunter, Alioth, has the bow. The second, Mizar, is carrying the cooking pot, which is brilliantly represented by the little companion star, Alcor.
Ah, that's perfect.
And the third hunter, Alkide, is carrying the firewood. It's a whole story playing out up there every night.
But for sheer existential dread, nothing beats the Sami tradition from Northern Europe.
This one is world-ending, literally. The Sami people see most of the Dipper as Fabna's bow. Fabna is their great celestial hunter, and he's aiming at Sarva, the great reindeer, a constellation that takes up half the sky.
So the bow is always drawn. What's the danger?
The danger is Polaris, the North Star. The Sami call it Boaji, which means the rivet.
The rivet.
Yes. They believe the entire sky is a giant dome held in place by that one single central rivet. And Fafna hesitates to shoot his arrow every night because if he misses the reindeer and hits the rivet,
the sky would collapse.
The sky would collapse and end the world. It's the ultimate high-stakes myth, a perfect encapsulation of the importance of that one fixed point in the sky.
Wow. That's a perfect place to end the mythology. It shows how Ursa Major is a guide, a map, a storybook, and a potential trigger for the apocalypse.
It's this living link connecting deep space science, ancient navigation, and these incredibly powerful survival myths.
And the Great Bear is still a powerful symbol in modern culture, too.
Its silhouette is timeless. You see it in art like Van Gogh's Starry Night over the Rhone.
And in politics. The Starry Plough, the flag of the Irish labor movement.
A powerful symbol. And of course, the state flag of Alaska, where the Big Dipper represents the North and endurance.
It's everywhere. But we have to circle back to that one visual quirk we started with. The bear's ridiculously long tail.
The anatomical problem, which has led to some clever reimagining. The most famous is probably from H.A. Rey,
the author of Curious George.
The very same. He wrote a book in the 50s called The Stars, A New Way to See Them, and he redrew the constellations to make them look more like their namesakes.
So what was his solution for Ursa Major?
He flipped it around. He suggested that Al-Qaeda, the star at the tip of the handle, should actually be the bear's nose.
Oh.
And the handle then forms the top of the bear's head and its long neck. The shape it creates is much more convincing. It looks like a great polar bear stalking across the sky.
It completely changes the picture. It actually looks like a bear.
It's a wonderful example of how we can still find new ways to see the same old stars.
So what does this all mean for you when you look up tonight?
It means that when you find the Big Dipper, you're not just finding north. You're taking part in a tradition that might be older than farming. You're looking at a patch of sky that holds infant galaxies and dying stars, all while our ancestors saw hunters and sages and funeral processions.
So challenge your own view. Yeah. Don't just see a ladle. Try to see the bear with its impossible tail. Or maybe try to see H.A. Ray's polar bear. Or the three hunters with their pot and their firewood. What stands out to you when you look up at the Great Bear?
And if you happen to see Fobna's bow drawn tight, well, for all our sakes, let's just hope he keeps a steady hand. We'd really like the sky to stay right where it is.